yours.
Good. Thanks for everyone for coming. It was great when Richard started here because we could talk about online communities, and I thought it was a good chance to actually talk about ours because we've had one for a while. This was my original title for this presentation, but it's a bit bombastic, so this is what it's really about. There's my Twitter handle if you want to tweet at me. No abuse, please. So for those of you who don't know about which, I mean, you probably know that we review washing machines and other products, but also since we started in 1957 we've been doing campaigning work. It says washing machine. And I like this image because it actually sums up 4 of our historical campaigns that we've done. So one that we did was lead in children's toys in the 1960s to get rid of that because it's not very safe. Compulsory child car seats. Compulsory seat belts in the back of cars was a campaign that we had, and we also had a campaign in the 90s about the fact that cars in the UK were £4,000 more expensive than cars in the rest of Europe, so we did a bulk buying of cars to sell to UK customers, and that changed the market now. So the other thing is we're obviously a commercial business, and we have 1.5 million magazine subscriptions, but we also have 600,000 or more than nearly 650,000 active campaign supporters. And the lucky thing for which is that we have a commercial business, so we don't have to do fundraising for our charity side of the business. We reinvest the money that we make from our commercial side into the charity side, so that we're basically a not-for-profit organisation. So, here comes which conversation. So in 2010 I started, and I had another colleague at the time, and our job was to launch a community website for all consumers. So we have loads of members, but Convo was always about everybody discussing consumer issues with us. So the good thing about it is that it really adds a human voice to us. So everybody who writes for the website, I'm going to show the new one because that's the old one in 2010. Everybody who writes for the website has their profile picture. They can write in their personal voice, so it really meant that we didn't have to be quite as formal as before. We could write in our own voice and write our own opinion pieces. It's also very useful at arming us with the views from real people, what they actually think about consumer problems, about dodgy supermarket pricing practices. And that means we can take them to companies. We can go to the government, so we put their comments in dossiers for government. And it also allows us to test ideas, so it's a really good testing bed for if we've got an idea for an investigation, what do people actually think about it. We've got one coming up about shrinking products, which originally was a really big subject on the community. And we also offer guest spots, so it's not just about which authors, it's also about other brands. It's about MPs have written for us, people like the Culture Minister Ed Vaizey, and also celebrities. We've had Jamie Oliver, we've had Esther Rantzen, among others, writing for the website. So that's some of their faces. We've got Ed, we've got Alex Chisholm, who's the head of the Competition and Markets Authority, and I'll talk a bit later about how we also invite our community members to write for us as well. So, this again is before the relaunch. We had an issue about nuisance phone calls, so we had thousands of comments from people who are fed up with PPI calls, and with ambulance chasers phoning them, with spam texts. So we had 30,000 comments, and some of them quite emotive case studies, like from Caroline, who was waiting, basically had her mother who was very ill. That we also obviously had amusing ones as well about what they do to stop nuisance calls or to annoy nuisance callers. So we've got John, who would use Captain Kirk phrases down the phone to annoy nuisance callers. So that was an example of, there's obviously a groundswell of public opinion around this particular issue. What can we do about it? So we decided to launch a campaign. This is the logo from it, and we've had 360,000 signatures. So the fact that we had so many comments was a really good sign that this is actually, when we put this out here, it's going to be a big issue. We've had the government working on it, we've had businesses like BT working on trying to stop nuisance calls. So that's kind of how we've been using the community over the years. So another thing we get is the fact that we can amplify the voice of individuals in our community. So we get case studies. So this is Martin Bostock, who was one of the original commenters on one of our conversations. And when we launched the campaign, we needed voices to talk about the issue. So this is Martin on Good Morning Britain. And we also had Lee Beaumont. You might have seen him a couple of years ago. He made a comment about the fact that he uses a premium rate phone number for anything he signs up to. And then what happens is when nuisance callers call him, they call his 0871 number. And he was making about £200 a year from nuisance callers. So he made that comment. BBC Radio 4 was really interested, so that he went and spoke on that. And then you had him on the Alan Titchmarsh show, you had him on Fox News in America, and he basically went around the world. And he's still with us, he still tweets at us, he still comments with us. So that's kind of how powerful these voices can come and how we can hear these stories, unique stories from people. Another thing that happens is we don't always have to launch a campaign. So sometimes we hear about issues like copycat websites. No one have a bigger screen in the other room. But this is somebody who added comments about a website called British Passport Services. And it's basically websites where they say you can order your passport through them, pay us £90 and we'll give you your passport. What they're actually doing, you pay them £90 and then you have the government asking you for your £90 for your passport. So they do nothing. And we had loads of comments from people who've been affected. What happened was we spoke to Trading Standards, Google were interested because there were lots of these websites, scam websites, advertising themselves in the pay-per-click bits, and the government was also interested. So what happened from that, when we kind of threatened that we were going to do some action on this, possibly launch a campaign, is we had Google saying, right, we're going to get rid of all these PPC ads that are from scam websites. Trading Standards did action, and the government launched an action plan on the issue as well. So sometimes just a few hundred comments. We don't always need 300,000 signatures. Something interesting about the community is obviously they don't always agree with us, so we put up opinion pieces on which policy and what we're doing, and sometimes they don't agree and sometimes they're right, so we have to be big about it and actually listen to what they're saying. So this is Dave, he was writing about smart meters, and the rollout was going to cost £11 billion of these smart meters in our homes. It's still going on, but we actually, when we were talking about this issue, we agreed and we reviewed the rollout of smart meters, and we kind of called on the government, you need to slow this down, you need to actually review what this issue is, how much it's going to cost and how it can be cheaper. So we always try and listen to our community when we can. And now I thought we'd go on to the relaunch. So we had a full redesign. I was very lucky to have a team of developers. We had Paul here, and we had Scott, who's a UX designer, and we had designer, and a project manager. And the system's built in WordPress, it always has been. We looked at the architecture and whether we wanted to go to a different system. And we decided that WordPress was the best fit to build something that was interactive, that we could have open source plugins that would add on new features. So we use a system called BuddyPress, which has things like profiles, and also the fact that it was quite cheap to build. If we wanted to build it from scratch, it would be very difficult, very expensive. So the strategy for the new website was the fact that in the original website, people would add a comment. There was no required registration. They would add a comment and they would go and we'd never see them again. So what we have now is that every new person who adds a comment, they see a simple registration overlay on the website. I'll show a demo of that in a minute. We're Witch, so we cover all consumer issues from technology to nuisance calls, to washing machines. And it was quite confusing on the homepage if you came to it, is if your interests are very specific to tech or to energy bills, you're a bit confused and muddled. So what we've done is we've launched new topic areas that funnel people into their interest areas. So this one's food and drink. It's optimized for mobiles, obviously in 2016. We want to be mobile first. We also wanted to do some integration with other Which websites. So Convo is separate to the main Which website. So I'll show you a bit later on how we're surfacing community elsewhere. And we also wanted to hand more control over to the community. So the website, when we launched, was very much Which writes an opinion piece, you comment below. And we wanted to look for ways on how we could actually put them as the centre of the community and not just be about us controlling things. Again, I'll show you more of that later. So this is looking at registration overlay. So we don't actually require registration. We thought that would be a barrier to entry for people, sometimes elderly, sometimes visiting the website for the first time. And if they had to register, they might just leave and not bother. So when they add their comment, they have to put in their username, they have to put in an email address. So all we need then is a password to create their account. So what comes up is a simple overlay, type in their password, they can opt into some emails, and they can register there. This is all Scott's handiwork. What that's led to is that 60% of new commenters are actually registering. So we're not losing that many people. And what we have now is a nice welcome journey, introducing them to the community so they understand our rules and how we do things. The other thing we've done, which is behind the scenes, which I haven't talked about, is data. So we've got thousands of consumers, people writing about all sorts of topics, and they're registering, but we've never been able to take advantage of that data. So if we've got somebody writing about energy bills, what if we could actually then contact them about our new energy petition? What if we could contact them about our switching services to switch energy companies? So that's what we've done. We've integrated with a CRM called Blue State Digital. We use it for our campaign supporters. And what it means we can do is we tag, when somebody comments on a conversation that's about energy bills, which is tagged with that issue, they're then tagged with that issue on their profile itself. We can see how active they are, how many comments they've made, what topics they're commenting in, and the beauty of that, it means that we can actually contact them in the future. We can also connect it with, are they a campaign supporter? What campaigns have they signed previously? Are they a Which member? And really we're kind of building data over time and asking their permission if we can contact them in the future about marketing things. Now this is Naomi Millward, who's one of our extra special super supporters. So the other thing we're starting to do, which I mentioned, was integrating the community on other websites. So this is a campaign petition on our new consumer rights website. And we're now integrating relevant discussions on those pages. Again, this is done through our tagging system. So if there's a consumer rights page about broadband, we will automatically bring in the latest discussion on broadband. And people can then go through. They can't comment there and then because we really want to bring people into the community. So I think something that's important about a community website is that they feel they're in kind of a smaller space, it's kind of their zone. And if they're just commenting there and then, they can kind of comment and not actually feel engaged with them. There are other people talking about things. So we have it on consumer rights, we have it on our campaigns website, and so after they sign the petition, they see it. And soon we're looking at other Which websites. So we have an elderly care website, we have a Which University website, and these all give us opportunities to kind of build new pockets of communities. Can we have a community of students, teachers, parents? You know, can we have a community built around elderly care? These websites get loads more traffic than Convo, so it's really good if we can take advantage of the traffic that they do get. For example, our banking campaign, when we launched it, we got 40,000 petition signs, but we also managed to get 1,000 comments through to Which conversation directly from that particular campaign. So people were definitely using it. Here's an example of where we've kind of using Which conversation with the external world. So this is Commissioner Hogan Howe. He's the head of the Met Police. He made a comment on how he thought that banks shouldn't necessarily always reimburse victims of fraud. We disagreed. We published a discussion about it, written by our Executive Director, Richard Lloyd. We had 775 comments, most of them agreeing with what we said and disagreeing with Hogan Howe. We also had 29,000 poll votes because we promoted it with our campaign supporters. And I think it was 97% thought that bank fraud victims should be reimbursed by banks. What this then led to was to some discussions with the police, and we actually published a guest post from Commander Chris Greeny, who heads up Action Fraud, and we published that last week. And he spent the whole weekend replying to people's comments and people's concerns about fraud and scams over the weekend. So it actually really helped us start that discussion with the police force and the rest of the world. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that we're making the community shape the community. Before it was all about us, now we really want to make it about them. So just with the building of the website, we surveyed them before they started, so that really influenced the priority of the new features. So I had a feature on there that I wanted badges and awards for people if they made so many comments. And I had another one which was if they wanted to share their ideas and actually write their own discussions. It was very clear through the survey that they weren't really interested in badges at all, and they really wanted to share their ideas. So we just changed the priority in our development, and we launched with the ideas section, and we're still thinking about how we might want to do badges in the future. They also helped us test the website during development, so we had a staging website. They fed back on loads of stuff, the wording, the buttons, where things were, and that's led to some important fixes before we actually launched. And we continue to listen to them. So I have a post on there, and they come and share all their views about how the website's working. We don't always agree, and I can't please everybody, but we try and release improvements regularly when we can. And I say we, it's mainly Paul who's doing the work. So this is the staging website where we get them to test things. Something we've done recently is getting our regulars, or our community champions, as I'm calling them, as Michael calls them, to work with us on producing content. So from the Hogan Howe discussion, there was actually quite a lot of rude comments about Hogan Howe, and a lot of them were breaking our community guidelines. So when you add a comment, you see a link to the community guidelines, but I think a lot of people go there and they have a rant and they don't read them before they post. So I had an idea of perhaps we could put a piece of copy in the comment box itself that kind of makes people think about the community guidelines and how they should behave. So I put an option out to the community and said, do you think this will work? They then started coming back with their own ideas. Please read our community guidelines. I felt this was a bit too much, saying they will be removed. Sounds like one of the mafia. We had a nice one from Beryl, who was a bit nicer in the way that she'd written it. We had Ian, who had things like "Don't bloody swear you do it," which we didn't use. And then together, at the end of it, after about 20 or 30 comments going back and forth, we ended up with please make sure you respect others' views and our community guidelines when you post it. So I've got a GIF and a presentation. So it was a nice group effort there. So the other thing is putting their ideas at the forefront. So we have our ideas section. I'm going to do something busy. That's this. So they can post their ideas, and then they can vote them up. The rest of the community can vote them up and down. I don't know if you use Reddit. It's a very similar idea. It's not as used as much as I'd like it to. But we had, for example, John Ward's written about charging for one-trip plastic bags, which is obviously the thing we have to do in supermarkets now. That led to him writing a post which was then featured in the tablet version of our magazine and so on. So it can really, we're putting them in the centre of what we're doing, which that their voices actually matter. This is similar to the nuisance calls one, but with the VW scandal, the emissions scandal, we were looking at it as an issue, but we didn't know what kind of groundswell of support we'd get if we actually campaigned in this area. So we published a discussion, we put up a poll, We asked, should the government introduce more stringent testing of cars with emissions? And we got a very resounding result. And that led us to launch our campaign, and we have over 100,000 signatures. This, again, is the integration that we've done. We're now embedding petitions within Which Conversation, the community itself, so they don't have to go off to the campaign's website. So the integration is two-way. And this was a new community member who's now made, I don't know, 2,000 comments, I think. This issue really brought him into the community, and now he's really excited that we actually launched a campaign after actually talking to them about it first. So I thought people like stats, so I thought I'd give you some stats. So comments, since the relaunch, so we relaunched about 6 months ago, but I just wanted to look at the last 3 months where we've really been able to hit the ground running. Obviously when you launch a new website, your traffic's going to have a dip through organic search, so we've recovered from that now. So the first 3 months of 2016, we've had more comments than the first 6 months of the previous year. A lot of it is down to promoting it with our campaign supporters, so we're sending more emails to them to send them to the community. And we've had more poll votes, including things like the scams and VW, than we have in the whole of 2015. And since the beginning of time, we've had 11 million visits, we've had 150,000 comments and 500,000 poll votes. But now we're taking off, so the only way is up, really. So, some tips, some takeaways. So the community needs a shared purpose, and this is the thing I'm still really trying to work on, is that it's a community for positive change, and I really want to communicate that to them. Sometimes they used to feel they were kind of commenting into a vacuum, and we're trying more and more to communicate the fact that they're leaving their comments, they're being used in the magazine, they're being shown to government, we're launching campaigns. So they really need to know what the purpose of your community is. That's another thing, show the community's achievements back to them, so prove that we're more powerful together, so that kind of supports that previous point. Your community needs to have a leading hand in its direction, so before it was basically about us, and now it's really about them feeding into it, and not to be too afraid to let go. So as I say, sometimes we disagree with them, but I'm giving more chance to them to actually have their say and debate it. So we have lots of advocates, and sometimes they can be our biggest critics. So they can really critique the website, they can say they hate it one day, and we'll introduce a fix and then they'll love it. And then we also have lots of critics on there, and by listening to them and responding to them, they can actually become your biggest advocates. Don't let your data go to waste, so the more that you leverage on the community, the more that you know about your community members, the more success you can have in the future. You don't need the latest software, the most expensive software to build a strong community. It's about the community having the features that they want and that they need to use to be able to connect with one another. And it's not always about the features that you want to introduce, like badges. It's what they want. And don't hide your community way. So it's a huge asset. I know we're in big companies, and it's quite hard sometimes to shout about the value of a community and listening to consumers. But it's definitely an asset to the brand. And so try and surface it on your most important websites. So there we go. That is my presentation. Questions, please?
With your polls and your petitions,
yeah,
I think you're in a very interesting position because they actually are presented to government and things like that.
Yeah.
So how do you validate that they are not gamed in any way, or?
That's a good point. So the polls aren't a scientific poll. So the petitions are, they have to put in their email address. But yeah, with a poll, if you were to go on a separate browser or use a different computer, you could vote again. So whenever we present those, obviously it's the volume. So if we have 100 votes on something, I don't think that's enough. We quote polls in the magazine when they've had more than 1,000 votes, and we say very clearly that those have been on our community website. If we say something to the government or in a meeting to a regulator, again, we'll describe it in the nature that takes votes on your community. You know, every now and again I'll go and look to see what the IP addresses are, but you can kind of sense where the traffic is coming from as well. So you can, if it's coming from our supporter emails, you know, we've sent the traffic there. We know they're all individuals. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, good.
Yeah, moderation. How much of an issue is that when you're getting, like, presumably you're getting spammers? And
Yeah. So we have a really good spam filter, so a Gizmet, so that stops most of the spam. It's more the real people who are spammers who come in and start posting links to their websites. So we're reactive moderation, so we don't see every comment before it comes up. They go up automatically, and obviously that brings that challenge. So we do moderation during the day, so it's me and Lauren, who's in my team, is there. And then we have out of hours moderation as well, so we have a company called ICUC, used to be Temporo, and they do an hour of moderation a day. Sometimes if there's loads and loads of comments, yeah, it's a problem. But we have a community moderating system as well, so they can report comments to us, so it makes it a much shorter list. I am looking at how we might want to do more community moderation. So if we've got our community champions, they know the guidelines, they know what spam. Should they have an extra ability to take down a comment, they definitely know if we trust them, and then that would take the burden off us as well. But, so far it seems to work. Yeah.
Out of interest, how many people are running your community?
So it's me and Lauren, basically. So it's the two of us. We also run the content on the campaign's website as well, so all the petitions. The writers, the authors, come from across Which. So we have, you know, hundreds of people, and they go in and they'll respond to comments as well. So we kind of manage the content schedule and the moderation. Yeah, there's only a couple of us. I wish, yeah, it'd be nice to have more. But you can never have
problem,
two.
isn't it?
Yeah.
You've demonstrated discussions and ideation. Do you use any other features in sort of the community kind of technology stack? Badging, rewards?
So the badging is one we're looking at. So we had another plugin called Badge OS, and what's good about that system is you can set what the rewards are going to be, and also you can have a point system, so it could move them up a user level. We actually got designs for that. We're all kind of ready to go, but it was, you know, the priority changed because the community felt like they were being patronised by badges, and I think maybe that's a messaging thing. And the other thing is that basically it broke things. It was breaking everything. So we didn't launch with it. But as far as other things that we try out, I'm interested in looking at groups. So we've split out the community into these topic areas, and we see people forming kind of informal groups and discussions, and I'm wondering if I could formalise that more. So if they had a particular idea that they wanted to ideate on, talk about, can we put them somewhere else rather than filling up a conversation and then going back and forth with it? So groups is probably the next thing. Again, that comes with BuddyPress. So it'll be what would the UX look like on that? What features do they actually need to do that? But otherwise, yeah, it's polls. They can vote on each other's comments.
Friending?
We've got friending as well, and friending is useful, obviously, just to make that connection with somebody else, but it also gives them a filtered view of comments that their friends have made. Yeah, there's all sorts of things. Yeah, so we've got the activity feed as well. An interesting thing about the activity feed that I've been talking to Paul about is that it shows the activity of only the registered users. So anybody who's added their first comment, they're not then included in that full activity feed. And sometimes the regulars are like, where are these comments? They're not in here. So we're going to look at how we might be able to have a page where it's all the comments as well. Yeah. But again, so with WordPress, you're often limited by what the system is giving you. So that's BuddyPress, that's how that system actually works. Paul's done amazing work at kind of pulling plugins apart and then rebuilding them. But you know, it's good in a way that it's such an open source system that we can
have a lot of overlap between community on the website and then community on social media.
Yeah, there is. So what's great about the way that we do content on Convo, so it's not a forum, it's a post opinion piece with a title, it's got images and stuff, so it makes great content to share on social media. So in a way we do get a lot of crossover there. Our Facebook audience is very similar. We have social login now so that they can log in with their Facebook account. But what I wouldn't say is that we're forcing people from our Facebook page or from our Twitter page to go and join the community and talk about it there. At first, I was a bit like, we're kind of splitting our community into all different places. But I'm more comfortable with it now. People want to talk where they want to talk, and they serve quite different purposes. So on Facebook, the comments on our page anyway are very short, they're very reactive. On which conversation, it's a lot back and forth with very lengthy comments that they make, and quoting other sources and that type of thing. So there are some people who do both, but they use them in different ways. Hello.
So with a community like this, my first thought is it will become very ranty where people just literally want to go in there and rant. So how do you stop that from happening and turn it into something more positive rather than just a place for people to have a moment?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the content side of it, the fact that we can commission content and discussions that we think are useful and that we're interested in, the community's interested in, helps. So we can kind of focus those discussions. If we had a forum where they can obviously go and post whatever they want, then that could lead to very ranty discussions. There's also the messaging around the community. So when we reply to them, we're being a good ambassador for how you should respond in the community, and that's filtered down into the regulars, the loyal kind of community champions, and they'll go in and they'll respond and try and move things back on topic. One of our key rules is be on topic as well, so obviously you can rant on topic, but often you'll have people go off in other tangents, go into the politics of something completely different, and we'll try and bring them back on. So it's in the moderation and in the good community management. And my way to think about moderation, my preference is that we are there to kind of manage the community, not to police them. So if they start getting ranty, fine. We just try and nudge them back in the right direction rather than telling them off, particularly.
Do you have any kind of instant messaging or chat function outside of a forum thread?
No, so it is another feature of BuddyPress. You can do private messaging. I discuss it every now and again because sometimes when you see a discussion that's going off topic and they obviously want to talk about something with one another, you're like, oh, they could do that in private messaging. But my concern is that it would just start people having pockets of discussions and might lose its usefulness. But I'm still open to it, and it might be one that I present to the community and say, would you find this useful? What are your concerns about it? They're usually pretty good at working it through together and understanding the purpose of the community. Something I am looking at though, which I do want to launch soon, is we have specific discussions on consumer issues. I would love to have a discussion that's more open, so they can talk about anything they want to, within reason, obviously within the rules, and maybe do that once a month or once every 2 weeks, just so that they can kind of talk about sport or talk about politics if they want to, because that's what I feel we're missing at the moment. It's so focused that they kind of lose the fun of it sometimes.
So is it right to say that they are commenters, they're not topic starters?
They're commenters, yeah. They can post their ideas and they can be voted on, and then we'll make them into those topic starters.
So in order to start the topic as a member of the community, you kind of have to get enough support behind your topic for it to be...
That's true. I mean, that's the idea of the idea section. I will say that we do kind of trawl through it anyway and look at the ones at the bottom. If we think it's a good, unique idea, we will still get in touch with that person. That's probably because the ideas section, we haven't promoted it well enough yet. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. And they do then send the copy to us, and we'll do a quick, proofread, maybe a quick edit, and publish it. I would like to look, and again, it was on our backlog, how could they actually submit it through the WordPress system? How could they have a front-end editor that they could actually do all their bolding and all that kind of stuff with it? So that, again, we can kind of give them more control, and they feel like they're actually not having to go through a kind of editing process.
So you mentioned earlier about your challenge. One of your challenges is how to make it feel like a community, and how to get the members to identify as a community.
Yeah.
And maybe talk to each other a bit more. It feels like you've set up a blogging platform,
Yeah.
and it's very editorially led, and the advantages of that are amazing, as you outlined in the presentation, that it's surfacing all this great stuff, and it serves the campaigns, it serves the brand amazingly well. I think it'd be really interesting to start a kind of an off-topic or a lounge area, let them start their own topics and see what they come up with, see what they talk about, just to find out.
I think it's fair enough.
That would create a community, I think.
Yeah, I think that's exactly, we should look at how we might want to do that more, I'd say off-topic area, but yeah, that kind of freer area of what they could do. They do kind of do it already in my website feedback discussion, so there's been 1,000 comments in there, and they kind of go in there and go, oh, what about this, what about this idea? And that's more that the regulars know to go there. So having somewhere where everybody goes, I mean, another thing that would bring community feel, I know you do on your community, is the regulars welcoming new people as well. We don't have that, and I feel like that's another thing that would be good to have as well.
So where you've not got specific topic areas for certain topics, do you see fragmentation of users going to Facebook or somewhere where it's completely open and they can discuss things, or do they just tend to stick to the my website feedback?
Yeah, they tend. I mean, we obviously have a contact us, and they also email their ideas to us as well. But we've covered so much. There's probably an area that we've published 4,000 discussions now, which means we're often repeating ourselves. But there's usually somewhere where they can talk about it. It's hard to know. So I don't know. Maybe we, obviously every website has a bounce rate, and we do too. If they're bouncing because they haven't found what they're looking for, it's hard to work out whether they're going onto another website like Facebook to talk about it. I mean, most of our traffic to the website comes from Google and other search engines, and they're searching for their specific problem, and they're coming direct into something that they search for and that's relevant to them. So I don't think we see that problem that much anymore.
The Kismet spam service, is that a paid for service?
I think it's like $50 a year, something really cheap.
You're not involved, you know that.
Yeah.
It's paid, but it's cheap.
It is cheap.
And yes, it's like it grabs thousands upon thousands of spam comments, and we don't even have to see them or think about them.
So it pays for itself within about 2 days.
Yeah,
half a day.
Yeah. So the amount of spam comments we actually see. So there's in a way there's two filters. So there's a Kismet which stops them before they even get to your site. We've got a really good way of kind of stopping spam comments before they're even submitted through the system, because the system spots it there. And then there's also the filter on WordPress which puts spam comments in the spam filter. Those are the ones we can see, but we get about 2 a day probably. So it's really, the spam ones are not the ones we have to worry about. The ones we have to worry about are libel. So, if they're insulting a company or an individual, those are the ones we're concerned about, because those can slip through the net. Links to spammy websites or illegal websites, those can get through, but we put those automatically into pending. And other ones that we need to look out for, people who might sound like suicidal. Those are the really, those are the ones that I get our external moderation company to alert us to. But yeah, at the moment, spam's not a problem.
Do you get spam subscriptions, spam members?
We did have a hell of a lot. So we've got about 60,000 registered users now. The new system is extremely good at stopping those spam registrations. So I think I can safely say that we've had 9,000 registrations in the past 6 months. Most of those, I think the majority of those are real people. Previously, I think a lot of those were spam accounts, and what we need to do is, with the integration with BSD, is go through and see when were they last active, have they ever posted a comment, and do some database analysis on those registrations.
Do you have any issues with, obviously you've got your test data for, like looking at child castings the other day.
Yeah.
Do you get any problems with users sharing that information on the community?
In what sense?
Well, the results.
Okay, so the member,
Because the
the
results
member only stuff.
Yeah, the value is in the member only stuff. isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what? Not really. They don't seem to talk
Very good.
about it too much. They are very good. They might start sharing it on their Facebook page. So obviously, this is the Best Buy, product, and you should go and buy it. But to be honest, I think it's more sometimes websites then go and post our stuff rather than users posting it in the community. If they do, I think it's happened a couple of times. We might email them and just let them know that that's one of your member benefits as a member, just so you know which conversation is for all consumers, that type of thing. But it's extremely rare. Yeah, they're relatively well behaved as a community.
Are brands or companies able to represent themselves?
Yeah. So obviously we go out to them and they come to us to write pieces. But also we do have companies going and posting comments of their own volition. So we've had one particular discussion was about buying plants online and having problems, having rubbish plants through the post basically. And a lot of companies were being criticised on there, and those companies then went on and started doing their customer service on Which Conversation. And that's completely allowed, that's fine. Other times we'll get companies calling me saying, my company's being criticised on there, you need to take all these comments down, and we just need to say, no, you've got a right to reply, you can go and reply to those people and use their logo in their avatar.
So that's a brand representative, is that a personal thing? Or?
It can be a brand, it's usually a person, but it can be a brand. We invite companies to respond to people as well if they've criticism. We did one with our energy campaign where we invited each of the energy companies to post a comment as well. I mean, the only thing we don't allow, and we don't allow as Which, is advertising. So we don't have ads on the website, and we don't allow companies to advertise themselves either. So that's always when we receive a post from a company about a new service. For example, TalkTalk introduced a nuisance call blocking service. They can talk about that and they can say how they're responding to our campaign, but it's not an advertisement specifically about you need to go and TalkTalk's the best company in the world, that type of stuff. So it's a fine line sometimes.
What kind of interactions get from Convo back into CRM or Blue Slate Digital? What kind of stuff do we take back off the site?
Yeah, so obviously I talked about how we tag each of our posts with the issue. So we get that data, and this person is interested in energy bills, nuisance calls. We also have the topic areas and how often they've commented in technology, food and drink, home and energy, that type of stuff. How many comments they've made, when they were last active, what their marketing permissions are. What else have we got? We don't put their actual comments in the system because it's just so much data we'd have to send through to Blue Slate Digital. But obviously we have that in the back end of WordPress. Yeah, that's kind of most of the data. And then we can then match that with our supporter database. So if they share the same email address, we can see this person signed 3 of our campaigns. They haven't signed this one, but they've commented about that issue. Can we join up in a way?
And then do we actively market to them through knowing that connection?
We haven't yet, so that's the plan going forward. So what can we, I mean, the other thing I want to do is what type of welcome journey can we do? What type of emails can we do when somebody's commented on energy bills? Can we then automatically for a newsletter present them with our latest discussions about energy bills, but also can we move them through a journey through can we make that person into a campaign supporter? If they're not interested in that, maybe down the line we do some member stuff as well. I mean, another thing we're looking at is retargeting. So of the people who bounce off the website, can we retarget them on Facebook with a petition or the latest discussion that's relevant to the page that they originally visited? So yeah, there's loads of stuff we can do with data. Great, I enjoyed this. Fine. We've got pizza here.
I think pizza's due to arrive at 1:30.
Okay.
So,
Can I throw a question out there?
help yourself.
Yeah, I was talking to Michael about community champions, and this is the area that we haven't moved into. So we have our loyal community members, but we don't give them anything. We don't meet them in the offline world, the real world. I just wondered if anybody else running communities does any of that type of stuff.
Kind of. So we actually have a community that is based around meeting them in different locations, but our community is global, so it's and it's still fairly young. So we tend to hold networking events for them, and then we'll meet them there. And what we try and do is when we meet them, we actually try to encourage them to get more involved in the community and try and do more there. So we kind of do it the other way around. It really does depend, realistically speaking, on how are you going to meet them, where are they based, do you have pockets of them, do you have like clusters. Otherwise it just gets really, really difficult, and for us it's near enough possible to sort of try to get them all to one place unless you do something like a conference, but then do you pay for their costs to get there?
Yeah, yeah.
We're from a not-profit as well, so you then have to look at budgets and you start to wonder what can you actually do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing we have done is focus groups with our campaign supporters to find out what issues that they think we should be campaigning on. And we've done those in London, Scotland, we're in Scotland, Edinburgh, I think, and in Birmingham as well. But we haven't done anything like a training day. Michael, briefly talk about what you do there.
What you talked about is that kind of engaging the membership rather than the super users, because that sounds like a very big, tough thing to organise. Everybody.
Believe me, it's a nightmare. But we try and get them in, so they become members, and as part of their networking event, we then encourage them to become super users. So we're currently redeveloping what we used to have, which was like an ambassador program. And that was partly a way to get your super users to be more active. But back then we didn't have a community. And so since we've launched the community, we've kind of gone, right, that needs to go on hold because we now need to redefine exactly what we want those people to do. And by having something like champion as a status, then actually you have to give them what is it that you have to do in order to become a champion, and what do you get once you're a champion, if that makes sense. So it's tricky, I don't envy you. But at least they're all based in the UK. So it's
that's true.
so it's a little bit easier to do them regionally.
I was working with Fair Trade, and one of the things that we had a lot on that website was they have a lot of community resources, and it's set up in quite a bunch of different ways. In that you can do things like you can have official things like making your town or your community fair trade friendly, and you have to have certain levels of certifications, but they also have a lot of learning resources which are just purely community based. So that basically you can set up your own little fair trade group, and you can access these resources from which is everything from information packs to stickers to downloadable things you can add. So the way they set it up is essentially they have a whole bunch of different levels of interest you can take, and different resources available at each of those levels, which only at the larger level does fair trade actually get involved and actually do things like setting up like mini-con conventions and things like that, which was quite interesting. I was also working for ViiV, which is anti-AIDS medication, and they have very strong community involvement. So that's the whole point of what they're doing, really. And with that one, it was quite a lot of top-down conference level stuff, but once you got past they organised these large conferences in large groups, but once you got past that, there were, they basically provided resources for people to basically have just interconnected networks in all the different spaces where they were pros. It was different because V's a global thing rather than the UK thing. But what they did there was in different countries they actually had community officers, which they called them, who their role, and again this is a different aspect, but their role was to essentially facilitate these different networks from setting each other up. And they didn't provide any more tools than basically just a central point of reference. But again, it was interesting because the difference between fair trade, where they had all these different levels of resources, and VEEV, where all they really did was just provide a point of contact.
On that note, was the fair trade site quite costly to build? Because obviously as soon as you start having content that's available to certain types of members, you've then got a whole web of development that needs to be done, because what ends up happening is, how do you differentiate them? What do they have access to? How do you set it up as an end user? So your community managers, how would they go about managing that content?
Fair trade would have been a lot more expensive to build, but it was a little bit of a non-profit charity thing. So a decent amount of we didn't build for a lot of the time that we actually spent on the site. And even still, we basically we did a lot of shortcuts in that. And the technology we used on that was expensive technology, but the licenses were donated because it was a non-profit. So it's an interesting question. Yes, if they had paid for all of the stuff, it would have been a very expensive website. But because of the nature of fair trade and the fact that they we were able to get quite a bit of stuff donated, it was reasonable, which is not really very helpful for most people. But
even as a not-for-profit, as soon as you say, "Would you like to donate that?" everyone goes, "No."
Yeah, I mean that was actually partly because of the agency I worked for, was relationship with some of the people, enabled them to basically say, we're working on this, but we're also doing this non-profit thing. How about you provide a free license for them to work into?
I work with cancer research, and I'm some of the best person to speak to this stuff, community manager or product manager, but we rebuilt Cancer Chat onto a new platform, did a lot of development around that using Drupal, and we migrated a lot of content, a lot of users over. Part of that was because the community, whilst it's kind of unusual, because Cancer Chat is a place for people to talk about issues related to how they've been touched by cancer, so they know it has it, they themselves have it. So when they're on that site, they're there because they need support and they're thinking about themselves as opposed to supporting others. But we do see an amount of people come back once they have time to support others, and some of the most active users will reply to people, but also know that there are moderators and nurses present who can better help them out with medical information. But that said, we do get a lot of crossover in terms of they will support cancer research by fundraising. They'll come to the offices to discuss things as to what it is we're planning, a wide range of things. Users will also be involved in user testing new features, so sometimes it'll be remotely, again, mostly UK, so we don't see much problem with people being spread across the world, but through that community you do get, it's a small number, but you do get really invested people who are, really care about helping others and being part of that, so it's a good thing to try and encourage and foster if you can.
Yeah, I'd say that they're self-selecting. It's pretty obvious who your super users are, even if you just look at the data. But the behaviour is the biggest thing. The ones who are signposting to other resources, being helpful, creating culture, being warm and friendly, always, when we approach them and say, do you want to be we just give them a badge and say, do you want to be our representative? And then we do offer a lot of support around that. I'm from Macmillan Cancer Support, so that's our community. And it's a really strong and powerful thing. So they're self-selecting and they service themselves, and they are already great advocates of the brand. And as soon as you start a community champion program or community host or volunteer moderators or whatever you want to call them, it reduces, I think, as your workload as a community manager, because you're devolving a lot of that community management soft touch stuff to people who have already got a massive amount of social capital. They're well respected. They're more respected probably than us in admin, because they've got, in our case, they've got their own cancer experience. Or in any other, say, commercial community, they would have 7,000 posts or something, whatever you give them to show that they're kind of really respected and safe, and they've been around for a while.
You find it with us as well, so that when those top community members, we publish a post from them, usually gets more comments than if we were to post the same subject, because they recognise their friend at the top. And you're right, you can spot the community champions. It's not just the people who are making the most comments. So we have the ranters, and then we also have people who do a high volume of comments, but they're really helpful in the community. And those are the people, the trustworthy people who you'd want to actually give that extra bit of control and power to. So
we view ours as our eyes and ears across, because we can't cover all the community, we can't read everything, so when you get to a certain size you can't. Something that worked really well was to ask them to recommend people who would be community champions. So every year we do a recruitment. It's important because of the sensitive nature of the work that they're doing, the volunteer work that they're doing for us, it's important to let them not have to do it. It's not, there can be an endpoint that can fade out whilst they're doing it. But it worked really well to say, well, who do you think in your groups would make a really good champion? And that's how we did the recruitment. We didn't even have to do we had people in mind, and it was really interesting that there was a big crossover between who they suggested amongst themselves and who we thought would make a good champion. So it was all in the right way. Is it worth saying something about what we do with them?
Yeah.
So we bring them into the office. We try and celebrate. All they get is a little badge after their name. They're like volunteer moderators or super users. But we massively appreciate them. We send them bits and pieces of free stuff, branded stuff. It's not massive, but it kind of shows our appreciation. We get them into the office. We talk about community issues about 4 times a year. We provide loads of training. We put them through the kind of Macmillan official volunteer program, so there's various support for volunteers there. We give them emotional support. We do sessions with a counsellor because it's tough subjects. So again, in the commercial sector, then maybe they could have advice on customer service. I don't know. I think all this kind of support that you put around them, welcoming them into the brand, having our chief executive make some time to be there to talk to them and say thank you. Again, we really appreciate your volunteer effort, and just as much as we can to show that, and as much support that we can put around that as well. And they already have what you mentioned. They've people who come into the community are. I'm trying to make this general, so they would need support and help. And then once they've received the support from a really friendly, warm, welcoming community, there's a massive drive then to give something back. We find that over and over again. You made reference to it, and it's just a brilliant mechanic. And if you can kind of make use of that, and the end result, and we've also talked about badges. There's a really interesting article today sent out by, do you know Feverbee, the community management people? Yeah. His news article today was about badging and what to call people. So don't have just generalised levels of things. I think he was saying if somebody's done a really amazing blog post, then create a badge called, an amazing blogger, and then give them that and reward the brilliant behaviour that you're seeing. I thought that was really, really interesting, and might be a solution to one day realising your dream of badges.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you explain it to them and say, do you want this thing?
Yeah.
As badges, and if you do something good, you get a badge. It sounds
It's like
immediately
a
like,
France
no,
star.
I do stuff anyway, why do I need them? But, you know, once you actually introduce it and start doing it, I think it will sink in, and we find that it's a useful thing that actually is attached to it as well. So yeah, and also it's for the, you know, sometimes the regulars aren't always the best people to talk to. It's for obviously a feature like badges is for new people to try and make them become the regulars as well. So it's definitely something we'll test. We've already made them all, lots of designs. We've got a whole point system all planned. So yeah, it's ready.
We have badges. We've got very basic gamification on there. But one of the things we're looking at is badges that you can actually export and use on social media.
Yeah.
So because for us our audiences are slightly tricky. And so they're very focused on getting recognition from outside. And so we're looking at implementing that now. So but having badge systems where it can then be put on their LinkedIn profile or on their Facebook profile or somewhere where they can actually get the recognition for what they do.
Isn't that one of the features of badge OS?
I think so.
I think that was one of the things when we looked at that. It was we liked the idea that if we actually managed to create a badge system which people liked, or something they could chat about and actually and share it. And I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, I know there's I've seen Community Street Life. They have a really good badge system, and they graduate the levels in a simple way, so it's bronze, silver and gold, and they have the social sharing nature of that as well. The other nice thing they have is on that like main badge page where it explains what they are and what they're all about, actually shows the faces of the people who've earned those, which is a nice way of kind of championing them in different areas. Because the one thing we were thinking about is, right, people have got these badges and it's for them, where are we going to surface that beyond just their own profile? So we were looking at when they're actually commenting, can we kind of show 3 of those badges there, and how else can they kind of show off about it? So it's important.
Because the more they show off, the more traffic you can actually drive that.
Yeah, that's true.
Providing that the badge is clickable, it drives them back to the community.
And I think the other way to actually use it is for community management and moderation, and you know the behaviour. Not just if you've done a high volume of comments, can we give out manual ones? You told somebody to move back on topic, or you're really helpful with this person, and like manually hand out those. Yeah, that's the problem. You know, how do we message it in a way that's not patronising, and more useful than just here's a badge.
It depends on your demographics, doesn't it? Because I don't know what your demographics are like, but it kind of ranges where if you've got if your audience is younger and more digital, they kind of understand the value of badges. But if you have a slightly older audience, very often they respond to anything like that as, why the hell do I need a badge?
Yeah.
So it kind of varies on your demographics as well.
So our demographic is older, certainly. I mean, our average Which member is about 65, I think, 65. As far as visitors, it's definitely younger. So I think 35% of our users are under 35, which is nice. But yeah, I think we need to experiment and we need to test it out. I think with our survey before, and when we're talking in the community, it's a concept to them. They may never have seen it before, so we just need to test it out, put it on our staging website and see what works. And we'll probably get loads of feedback about the badges they think are useless, and also the ones they think would be more useful. And could we work together on what badges do you think there should be? And what can we work on that we could deliver together?
So we're also working on the idea as well of tying the whole badges into the idea creation thing as well. So like if you got certain badges, you were able to make suggestions which they they go out here, because obviously if you were a trusted member of the site, your ideas aren't going to be stupid and everything like that.
I'd say that's exactly it. You need a badge to demonstrate that you're a trustworthy regular member of the site, because it's a level playing field. I mean, so there's something in that giving it to new people, but also it's quite hard to communicate. You've only got so many visual cues, and you're communicating by text. So anything that helps that, anything that, like a postcard that says, or amount of time, I've been a member for 6 years or something. Anything like that is a cue and a clue to somebody new that, respect and the social capital. I'm sure it feeds into that.
It's really interesting because we talked about that as well. How can we show visually, even beyond badges? So me and Lauren are when we're on the website, we have a little red line around our avatar and on the side of our comment. So we were thinking, what can we give those community champions? Maybe a yellow, something like that. It was really interesting when we raised that with the community. Some of the regulars, username Wave Change, he's made 12,000 comments. He's really helpful, and he said, no, I don't want that. I want to feel like I'm the same as everybody else. I don't want to stand out in any way, which is really interesting. So how we can get past that. Again, he's one person, so it might just be his opinion.
The biggest thing when we ask people to be champions, would you like to be a champion, is they can't see themselves as representing. They're so worried about representing Macmillan, and for you, it's the same thing. They want to be part of a community, but now how do I have to act differently because I'm representing which? I can imagine that's a real big thing for them. And then you just have to do the reassurance of we want you to do this because you're doing brilliant stuff already.
Another thing, just a quick thing
It's not criticism. I've got to shut up. I'm sorry.
Last thing is that there could be a commercial advantage for us as well. So they're paying which members, so they have a subscription, and most active community members are the members actually. So the fact that they could have a badge to say how long they've been a which member could be 50 years somewhere. Again, when people see that, they'll be like, oh, what do I get out of that? Maybe there's a commercial aspect to it as well, rather than just a bit of fun. Yeah, that's about it.
Should we break for pizza? Pizza and chat? Thank you, Patrick.
That's right.